Well, hello there all you marvelous people, and welcome back to Terra Nil, the South African developed game where you are restoring a very much degraded world. My name is Will, and this is An Ecologist Plays, the channel where we're learning more about nature by playing games. Now, we last time ended where we had some fynbos that has been established, and that is marvelous. However, this is not the end. We have to cause a bit of chaos. Now, I'm just trying to figure out where the best place is to cause the chaos, because we are going to burn the fynbos, and we are going to burn a whole bunch of buildings in the process. And I think one should possibly burn this big area over there. So let us actually put a solarizer right over here. So this little building over here is going to concentrate the solar power, the sun basically, and we are going to take it and we are going to ignite fynbos. Now, fynbos is an incredibly flammable vegetation type of biome. It wants to burn also. It should burn every 12 to 15 years, and when it does, a lot of these plants will actually do better, and they will regenerate either through resprouting, or they'll have their seeds that actually lie dormant underground and then start growing after the fire. And it's really necessary to revive fynbos, and so we are going to do this. But in this game, what's going to happen is, as we solarize this little spot and it starts burning, we're going to burn the meadows or the grasslands here as well. We're going to burn down our buildings. We are going to cause, as you can see here, one massive fire. And we have burned a very large area. Okay, so now we have to do two things. We have to establish this one here, the Arboretum, which is a forest regenerating building, and we have to get some fynbos back, because as you can see here, our current fynbos is only 21% of what it is supposed to be, our quota is supposed to be, and that is only this little section right over there. Now what I am going to do is to go and first of all establish a little bit more of a forest. Now I'm going to establish forest, I think, in this area, but first let us remove this little section of degraded soil, right? Because we've got one little patch left here. And by doing that, we are going to do something interesting, and I'll show you what that is in a moment. Now, we are going to, first of all, here, place an arboretum. And by placing the arboretum, an arboretum is just a place where trees are grown. And by doing this, we now have this very nice piece of forest. And that is marvelous. But we are going to extend this forest. We are going to actually create a massive forest patch over here, or relatively big forest patch over here. Now, last time I said that it's good to space out your habitats. Like we had a little wetland over here, we've got a big wetland system over here, and another little wetland over here, because it means that if one gets wiped out, the others can survive. Not necessarily with forest. I think I had a note of that in the video, but it is important to know that when you have a small fragment, so let's say we just have a fragment over here, this is a relatively small area. It's got a very large circumference relative to its surface area. And the larger the circumference is relative to its surface area, the more prone this vegetation type, or this forest patch, for example, will be to disturbance. And we don't want that. We want a forest patch to be as resilient as possible. And so what we are going to do is we are going to connect this little forest patch with this larger patch, increasing its size. So there we go. So now we have increased this area inside relative to the little edge here, the circumference. This forest will now be a little bit more resilient to all kinds of horrible stuff that could happen to it. Things like fire coming in from the inside. Now in South Africa, our forests don't burn, but the coniferous forests which we have here, they technically would burn. That's where the whole idea comes from, where they regenerate on ash beds. It's what would happen with them. The forest would knock them back, clear the undergrowth, allows the seeds to establish without a dense canopy over them. And in essence, then they will be doing very well if they are on a nutrient-rich ash bed. Now we have more than enough forests, but we are going to keep on doing a little bit. We're going to make this entire section over here a forest as much as we can. I think that's pretty much as we are going to do. What we are now going to also do is to now wet the rest of the area. We're going to do that with the irrigator, of course. And by placing one here, We actually wet this area over here, this little burnt area over here. And we are going to do the same type of thing right over here. And over here. And look at that, we have a bit more greenery. And the reason we wanted that is so that we can put up some beehives on the edge here. In the big trees in the forest. And as you can see, we are now going to get our fynbos to come back into the system. And the fynbos patches now will be on all of these little grassy areas closest to the trees that we have planted. And we're going to also just do right at the back here a little bit more. Okay, now we've got the plant life and we've got the climate more or less established. Now we need to bring in the airship so that we can start breaking down our buildings and then also bring in animals into this system. So a few new things that we're going to be doing now. But this isn't quite the end, because you can see we do still have some open patches and we are going to try and get this area as wet as possible so that the toxins can leave the system. We'll talk about that as we go along. So we've got our quota, we've got some fynbos. We don't really have a lot of fynbos, unfortunately. I would have liked a little bit more fynbos. Maybe we can put in a little arboretum over there as well. And then one can water this section, just so that we have some vegetation present over here. And we can calcify it. We can put in a wind turbine, and voila. We'll be able to clear this area, no problem. And then by just irrigating it a little bit more, just so that the whole area is wet, we can introduce a little bit more fynbos. And isn't this just beautiful? Look at the high diversity of plants that we've got here. Lots of different ones here. Fynbos is one of the most diverse biomes in the world. Incredibly diverse. Really, really such a beautiful landscape to be working in. And this past week I had been working in this quite a bit. And in fact tomorrow I am heading out again to do some more field work in fynbos, where I'm going to take a whole bunch of second year students on a little excursion. Now what we are now doing, just wrapping up, we are going to be making a little research station over here just as we can scan for animals. And now we can also look at the regional climate. And we can have a few secondary objectives completed. And if we look at them, you'll see here that they are linked with how much humidity there is. Now what we'll have here is, if we have more than 55% humidity, we'll have ferns growing on the riverbanks. More than 80%, all the water lilies will start blossoming. We've got a few water lilies, but we don't have all of them. We'll have a salmon run at more than 90%, and we'll have the rains beginning if we can get over 70%. So let's actually aim for 70%. And the way we can do that is by having a cloud seeder, or few cloud seeders actually. This is going to take a whole bunch of water and evaporate it. It's not going to reduce the water levels though, however, but it is pushing up the humidity that we have in this landscape. So we're up to 63% already. If we can get above 70%, the rains will start. And I think we should be able to do that. Yeah, there we go, by just putting it right over there. So now we are on 78%, and just listen to that. There we go, the thunder is rolling in. It means the rains are going to be falling soon. And that means the toxic areas over here will start being rehabilitated on their own. There we go. This is what we call autogenic recovery. Recovery without human input. And that refers to when rehabilitation is driven by the ecosystem itself. So we're not digging holes in the ground to catch water and to save the plants or let them establish. We leave it and it just recovers on its own. And that is what is happening right over there. Now, while this is happening, we can actually move on to the final stage, which is the airship stage, and we are going to plop that down right over there next to the river. And then we can start removing our presence from this landscape. We want to no longer be present here, and we can do that by putting up recycling stations. And these silos are just going to take up all the buildings in the area and get it ready for pickup. We can have a little recycling down here. This is the nice part. We are really eventually going to be out of the system completely, and the environment is going to take care of itself. Now, before we completely go away, I do want to get to the salmon run section here, so I'm just going to put in some more cloud seeders, and there we go. Now the salmon run will begin. There are lots of little water lilies all the way along here. They are flowering. I think that's what it was being referred to. We've got a whole bunch of little ferns growing along the waterbank. Ferns really do love wet and shady areas. And look at that, we've got the salmon jumping up. Now the salmon are what we call coniferous organisms, which is a kind of a weird strategy for me because they breed once in their lifetime. They will have one breeding attempt and then they will die. So they start, of course, the eggs will be laid in the river, they get washed down, they hatch, and they swim to the ocean, and then they spend their lives in the ocean. And when they're ready to go and start breeding again, they will move into the river where they were born, and then they will go through this whole transformation, end up looking like this. They really change completely, especially the males, change in appearance, they don't eat, they just put all their energy into reproduction. And then they reach their spawning grounds, they have a massive frenzy, and then they die. Of course, while they are migrating like this, they really are important sources of food for bears and things like that. Whole ecosystems depend on that annual migration of the salmon. I'm wondering whether there is another spot where they will try to jump up. Usually you can see them, there we go, at little waterfalls like this. There are some more salmon jumping up. We don't see them migrating along here, although they would be moving all the way upstream, which is of course a difficult journey, but they get there because they can actually swim and jump up the waterfalls. And here he comes. Whee! This game really follows the principle of leave nothing but footprints. So there we go, we've taken everything out of this area. No more sign that we were actually in this section of the world. Now I do see we've had some migratory birds moving past here as well. Probably some geese that are coming along here. Now migratory birds really are in need of things like wetlands. A lot of migratory birds will be using wetlands depending on the species. But migrating water birds will be drawn to these little wetlands over here. Now in South Africa we have got a lot of wetlands that are Ramsar sites, which are basically sites of incredible importance, especially for water birds. And now unfortunately a lot of wetlands around the world are degraded through a variety of human impacts, things like taking water out of them, draining them completely, which exposes the peat and then results in the whole ecosystem being degraded. And of course peat mining as well, which I talked to my first years about last week. Now that is actually where peat is being mined from these wetlands, because peat is when you have got a lot of slow decomposition in anaerobic conditions, typically underwater, like in this wetland over here. Any leaves the bulrushes over here shed, or water lilies shed, or things like that, any leaves that falls in the water will very slowly be degraded as the geese come flying past. Will be very slowly broken down, decomposed, and because it does that, the soil gets extremely rich in organic matter. Unfortunately, in a lot of potting soils you will have things like peat moss, which is unsustainably harvested. Inherently, if you are using peat moss, it is harvested unsustainably, unfortunately. And so I, for example, don't use peat moss. I know it would work wonderfully in my garden, but it is never, as far as I know, harvested sustainably. And so by just making small changes like that, one can decide that, you know what, I don't want to have an impact on a thing like a wetland. I'm not going to be using those compounds. As we are just wrapping up here, the rains of course are coming back. We're just putting up some more loading docks over here, and now we have removed everything in this 33%, in this third of the world. We are going to quickly move on and just carry on doing that a little bit. And here we go, the last of the buildings. And then we have one more thing that we're going to do. We are going to bring in two more buildings, which is the Animal Observatory. Oh, I see we don't actually need to have it powered. Wonderful. So, let us use it. Let's scan for some animals. Now, we've got 6 species that we can scan for. This one, it says this grazer lives in herds on wide open grasslands. Now, we do have a lot of wide open grasslands. We've got a lot of meadows, and we can scan, and there we go. We've got deer. I don't know which species of deer this is, but there's a male over there. There are 2 females there. There is another female This male is obviously the dominant one. He had been fighting with other males and he had come out the victor, and he now has access to the females that are in his little harem over here. However, life is never that peaceful. We are going to be putting in another herd over here. And perhaps another herd over here. And there's another herd over here. So now we have a whole bunch of deer in this area. Of course, the deer over here, the deer over here, they of course would be putting a lot of grazing pressure on this piece of land. So I'm going to just leave them here, not going to get any deer in other areas, because in theory at least, once they have finished eating in this area and the grass is too short, the plants are too short to eat, and not a lot of food, they will move on to another area. Animals are not stupid. They tend to move when the food gets scarce, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Now this little one, the second one, this small amphibian lives in reeds of a wetland near a fynbos field. Now we have got fynbos here, we've got wetlands over here, we should be able to get them right over here. There we go, we have some frogs. Wetlands, incredibly important sites for frogs, because they are obviously amphibious, they will be on land, but they will be breeding in the water. And in this case, the fynbos here would have a lot of insects for them to eat. Really, really important insect control, the frogs are. Things like mosquitoes and flies. Oh my goodness. Imagine how many flies and mosquitoes there would be if we didn't have frogs. Really, we would be drained out of our minds with all the mosquitoes that would be in the area. So I'm just going to, I can't put any more there because there's no fynbos there. I think that was actually it. Unless we put some fynbos here. And then see whether we can bring in a population of frogs on this side. Yes, we can. Yes. Will the ecologist, can he spot it? Will the ecologist? Yes, he can. Alrighty. So, this one is a large caniform. In other words, a dog-shaped animal, or dog-like animal, that is in the forest, which contains a beehive and is on a hill. I don't think I really have any forests on hills, but let's have a look. I think maybe this area over here. We put a beehive over here. Let's see whether we can scan and find... No, it's not on a hill. See, there's a hill. There's no forest there. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a piece of forest that is on a hill. We just have it on the lowlands. So, we can't find the bear that was supposed to be in here. Okay, so that's good to know. Now we have a web-footed waterfowl that rests in a large lake when it is not flying. We have them flying. There we go. We've got some geese making their way along here. These are the migratory ones over here. Let's see if we can scan and find... Nope, it is partially in a lake. Okay. I don't think we really have a lake in this section. In this... No. Not there. And I don't think here either. Nope. We don't actually have a lake in here either. So we can't get the geese. Now a lake would be like where the river would actually go like this. But I don't think this counts as a lake. This is just... Yeah. This is just a river with wetlands next to it. Technically, a large body of water, large hole in the ground filled with water, that's a lake. So we don't have that, unfortunately. So let's look for the second last one. This industrious rodent. Now rodents will have teeth. Their front teeth don't stop growing. And this one, as far as I know, has got very yellow teeth because it actually has got iron in its teeth. It's got iron really, really common in its teeth. There we go. And that gives it its yellowish tooth appearance. Little paddle-like tails, which they of course use for threat displays. They will slap that on the water, and if you apparently go around closest to where they are, and they can be quite territorial, if you are close to where they are and you are on a canoe or a kayak, then they will slap their tails on the water and actually start chasing you. So it's a bit of a warning to go away, this is my home. Now of course, in theory, they would be building dams over here. If the river is flowing like this, from the right to the left hand side here, and they hear the water moving, they actually chop down, they will obviously chop down the trees, and we'll talk about why they do that in a moment. Chop down the trees, collect a whole bunch of branches, and then put that in the river to stop the flow of water. In that way, they are what we call an ecosystem engineer. They are building a dam, and that changes the whole ecosystem and makes habitats available for a whole bunch of animals that would not otherwise have had a home. So they are incredibly important in their systems, in their ecosystems in North America and in Europe, where we've got the American beaver and the European beaver as well. So 2 species of beavers left in the world. Let's see, I don't think we can actually find them over here. No, the river is not wide enough over there. I don't think we can have here either. No, not enough water tiles. And I think this may just be on the cusp of where we can get them. Unfortunately, not enough. Not a lot of river there. There we go. We've got one more group of beavers right over there. Technically being territorial, this group would not get along that well with this group over here. But yeah, you know, let's say they are separated by a little boundary over there. So the question, of course, is why do beavers chop down trees? Now they bite them down, they gnaw through them with their extremely sharp teeth, and that's of course where the iron in their teeth comes in, because that will strengthen their teeth and make them able to actually gnaw through the trees. But they do that so that they can get to the bark on the inside. So they'll chop down this tree close to the water, it will fall down, and then they eat the inside bark. That is what they mostly will be feeding on. And so they're doing it for food, but of course the tree falls down, they clear a forest patch, so they help the forest to regenerate, removing a lot of the older ones. A lot of young ones start growing, they remove some of the young ones, giving other ones a chance to actually survive as well. So they have a whole massive impact on this ecosystem. Really, really cool animals. Would love to see one day. Now of course we've got one last animal. This predator prowls in the forest near a source of food. I did say I'm not going to put in deer again, but let's see whether we can actually put in deer over here. We can. Now we have got deer right over here in this little grassy patch. And we need a presence of food and a woody area, a forested area, so that we can have timber wolves, which will be the largest predators we've got in this little ecosystem. Since we don't have the bears, we do have timber wolves as a predator. Now if we had forests right over here, somewhere around here, they really also would have been feeding on the deer surviving over here. But whenever these deer actually move into this landscape over here, in theory, they can't move in the game, but in reality, if they were to move into this area, they would come into contact with the wolves, and the wolves will of course catch them. The presence of the wolves in this area creates what we call a landscape of fear. This is a landscape where animals, the herbivores, are a little bit on edge because they know there are wolves in the area, and they've got to be careful with that. They don't spend a lot of time in one area grazing. These ones at the top here, they will be spending a lot of time grazing in this patch because there are no wolves here. There's no reason for them to be wary and move off to another area. The deer over here, however, they are close to where the wolves are. So in theory, they would be vigilant. They would be watching and then go, oh goodness, there are wolves in the area. Let's move a little bit over to this side over here. Let's graze over here. When the wolves come after them, they move to another area. So the wolves will actually help maintain the ecosystem by constantly getting the animals to move around. The prey animals will be moving around as a result. But that is the end of this section over here. So we have made everything. We are going to just quickly remove our last building over here, and that is going to be marvelous. That's a 100% removal or recycling has happened, and now of course we can go away. We're going to leave this ecosystem and leave it to its own devices. Of course, now with there being fynbos, when there's a lightning strike, the fynbos will burn, and that fire is going to spread. The grasses are going to recover afterwards. The fynbos will spread. All kinds of things will happen. But we are going to have no impact on that. We're leaving that up to Mother Nature. The wasteland is reclaimed. And the music is oh so nice. And just looking at what we have done, we have established forest. We have established the shrubland, the fynbos. We have put beehives in. We've got pollinators galore all over the place. We have got meadows. We've got fynbos. We've got wetlands. We've got forest. We've got a whole mosaic of habitats present within our landscape here. And along with it, of course, a whole bunch of animals. And that is marvelous. So thank you very much for joining me on our little adventure over here in Terra Nil. I'll be back on Friday when we are going to be doing a playthrough of theHunter, Call of the Wild. And it will be the Australian map. And I'm looking forward to seeing what animals we encounter there. So until next time everybody, stay safe. Thank you for joining. I will see you all soon. Bye.